Hi guys, how are
Hey
you?
girl, hey.
Hey, what up? To start, I like that in this show, for the most part, the elves, like we know elves can fight. We've seen it in the other Lord of the Rings things, but for the most part, they were kind of just being all regal and doing whatever they need to and being smart. But at the end of the season, we really get to see them in their battle armor and like as action packed as we know the elves to be. For you guys as actors, what was your favorite part of getting the elves to that point? Because we all know they can get there, but these elves have a different journey than like Legolas and the elves we've met in the future.
I really like that each character has their own vocabulary of violence that's indicative of who they are.
Hmm.
That Ismail has built this kind of I think it's largely capoeira based vocabulary. And also when he departs from that, you start to see his style deteriorate as he gets more and more desperate and more emotional. You get to see Elrond kind of build his fighting style. You get to see his prowess, his strength, but also his inexperience. You get to see the king kind of, it's almost like an indifferent grace to death. You know,
Hmm.
it's like, and now you, and then we'll dance over here, and your head's gone. It's almost balletic in its violence, and I really like that we have the freedom to do that, and that it is a furthering of the narrative as opposed to, okay, story stops, cool fighting happens, fighting ends, now back to story. That it is a furthering of who we know them to be, and we can glean more about these characters and where they're going from how they fight. It's just another tool for storytelling, and we're fortunate that they've afforded us that freedom.
Yeah. And Robert, I gotta say, I love this little nerd Elrond so much. Because even when he's like sword to his neck, he's like, no, but that's Celebrimbor's whole work. Like you can't just destroy it. And it's so kind of sweet to see how much he wants to
It's his
keep
journals. Yeah.
he wants
Yeah.
to keep that history alive. When you with a character like that that is just kind of so rooted in like he doesn't want the history to be lost. What for you is the most fun part about that aspect of Elrond as a character?
That aspect, yeah. I mean, like, it's a huge like preservation and preservation of history,
Mhm.
it becomes a huge part of Rivendell and the city that he creates, and fostering, the Dunedain and Aragorn and all that. Like, like that is a part of protecting history as well. Um, I always kind of like the idea that Rivendell is potentially built in the image of a region, you know, and there's a lot of things about that city that sort of find a new life in Rivendell, you know. Um, but yeah, he's like, if Elrond could have his way, it'd be sat in the tree, reading the histories, and exploring Middle Earth and meeting new peoples. I honestly think that that's what he would love to do. But it's just not. But I love it. He has so much heart. He's a really emotional elf. And
Yeah.
I love that about him.
And also the way Rob plays him, the king is so kind of pragmatic at times that Elrond is so romantic about Middle Earth
Yeah.
and his place in it and what is possible in Middle Earth. I really like what he's doing with it. Just don't tell him I said so.
I'll keep it to myself. Um, I do want to ask for my last question. I love all the like we waited essentially until the end of this season to have little Easter eggs to like the book Lord of the Rings. Like we get to see Aragorn's sword. We
Mm.
Gandalf, like all of these things kind of came together in those last two episodes. For you guys, was there a moment that you knew you were like, this is the nerdy thing that I'm the most excited about that it exists now in Rings of Power?
The music.
Mm.
If you know the books, the elves just won't shut up with the singing. And it is high time we've had an elf sing in that capacity.
Mhm.
And for it also to serve as a function of the story. It's kind of this funeral dirge and the passing of Middle Earth. We're singing about Middle Earth is going to die as soon as we get on the boats, and that was a moment where I'm humbled and honored to have that tiny nugget that I got to take part in the history of Tolkien on film.
I would say that when I read the episodes and when you read the books, you realize that like there's this sort of like, yes, it's good versus evil, and yes, the you know, the good guys go charging in on the horses and crash into the bad guys, and there's a huge battle and one wins or the other. But it's like if you read the histories, you know, if you read the First Age stuff, and you've got, you know, Morgoth attaching this guy to a chair and making him live forever so that he can see the destruction of his own family. It's really messed up and really dark and twisted. So I would say one of the things that I love that's now on screen is that the show has gone there with Celebrimbor and Anatar in a way that actually deepens and shows a different, feels more first agey in its insidiousness. You know what I mean? So I'm glad that exists. It's right. It's what Tolkien wrote, but it's also it shows just a different color and a different level of depth, which is absolutely there in you know, gaslighting in Tolkien. You know, emotional manipulation and coercion in Tolkien. It's everywhere. You know, so I'm glad that like that sort of complicated way of telling that story was embraced by the showrunners.
Yeah, I love this season. Thank you guys so much for talking with me today, and I really appreciate it.
Good to see you.